Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us. Just like that, we're at day 3 of the siberXchange with the theme Women in Cybersecurity. My topic today is to discuss the changing status quo and women leaders at the front lines of cybersecurity. What do we mean by a status quo? The word quo being a Latin word. It simply means that we reflect on what the political, social, and economic climate is of our time, and what the norm is, what the pattern is, what the rules are. Those rules don't get rewritten by policy. As you all know very well, they get rewritten by revolution. I want you to think about this for a moment, is that we invest a lot of our time in trying to get to the leadership position, in trying to get that security certification, in trying to get that job title. But ask yourself, how do you keep it? And how do you open the door for others around you? My guests today are such selfless people who continue to open the door for other women and other diverse groups around them. My name is Ali Hirji. I'm the lead of the siberXchange Advisory Committee. I'm faculty at Durham College, and I live here in Durham region. I'm coming to you live from the beautiful St. Francis Center here in the town of Ajax, and I want to thank Mayor Sean Collier and his team and Madhi Raza from CyberX for making this happen. We're gathered in the lands of the people of the Mississaugas of the Scugog Island First Nation. The land is protected under the Williams Treaties. Many of you would have heard of the line that a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. Think about that for a moment. How we've structured for women to participate in our society. And I said we, which I should cancel out to say how he. My first guest today is someone who I've spoken to a lot at various forums, someone with whom I've held a power hour as well. And all of you have joined it and participated in it. More importantly, she's someone who reminds us about the various masks that many women have had to wear, hiding their true identity just to fit in. She's going to talk to us, wearing a mask, about the history of women in cybersecurity, his story. And she'll remove the mask to reveal her story. Helen?
Hi, everybody. So talking about new normal, I'm wearing a mask, and this is my normal, and this is how I position myself. And many ask right now, why are you looking this way? What trying to do by putting this skull on yourself, hack 5. Actually, I want to say this is how I feel, and this is safe, and because it's a safe and distant environment, I will remove the mask right now. So hello everyone again. My name is Helen Oakley, and I'm one of the advisory board members for CyberX. I'm also working for SAP, global software provider, taking on leadership role in cybersecurity, specializing in application security. I'm a co-founder of Leading Cyber Ladies, Toronto, which is a global professional network for women in cybersecurity. I'm also educating kids in ethical hacking and other cybersecurity topics as part of organization hackstudent.com. So cybersecurity is my passion, but it's not just passion, it's my lifestyle. And you can see by that, by my mask, by my bandana hack 5, those hacking tools that you can play around and actually get it yourself. Yep. And we're going to talk today about how we're changing the status quo and what it means for us.
Keeping with the topic of masks, I'd like to introduce the rest of my panelists. Our panelists not only come from Canada or North America, they come from India and Africa. India, as many of you may know, the masks that women have had to wear while pursuing leadership opportunities in India, let alone in cyber. Reflect on this, that as early as, or as recently as 1930, home economics in India was a subject that, thanks to colonial rule, women were expected to take. Men apparently caught the fish, women cooked them. Home economics, home sciences, a subject still taught, although there has been some changes that have happened. One of our guests comes from Africa, a continent with 55 countries where till date, perhaps only 10% of decision makers are women or other diverse groups. The issue is that a lot of these women have come to leadership positions Let's learn from them about the various masks they have removed, unveiling the true fabric of society and revolutionizing change. We're going to go first to Africa, where we're going to start with Lydie. Lydie, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, everybody. Hello, my name is Lydie. I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks to the siberXchange team for, setting up everything for us. I come from Cameroon. Cameroon is a very beautiful country in Central Africa. I work at PwC as a Chief Information Security Officer for Francophone Africa. I like to position myself as a security evangelist because I really think that we need to keep training, to keep, raising alert. We need to keep put awareness in regard with all the risks related to cybersecurity, because the risks are just, huge. The impact can just be, the impact is very big, and we need to keep people aware, knowing that things need to change. We need to adapt to the new issues. We need to make ourselves safe in that, new normal.
And I want to work with that new normal. Thank you, Lydie, for joining us from all the way from Cameroon. And I'm going to go to Karen before we go and take a flight over to India. And not only do I want to have you introduce yourself, but also talk to us about what brings you to the siberXchange platform.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Nemani. I have actually just recently left leading COVID response for OpenText while I take a step back, focus on building the Women in Cybersecurity Ontario affiliate, of which I'm co-chair along with a number of wonderful women, while I go back to look for a cyber role, because I actually left and I came back. And I left to take a sidestep in business to figure out how to map security and the business together and bring them together in a much more functional fashion. And now I'm bringing all that knowledge back and figuring out, what do I want to do next with all of this? And while I do, and in my experience, there's a lot of supports needed for women looking to not only enter the field, and we're going along with that, but we also need to retain women in the field. And to your question, Ali, our new normal, we really need to think and focus on what the impact to women is, because there may just be a diversity recession as a result. Some interesting points came out from Melinda Gates and Michelle Obama the other day about how many young women in countries around the world who aren't going to even get opportunities to finish high school. And that may be a permanent fact, and we're going to see even less women available even to work, which I think is a crushingly scary possibility.
Absolutely. And Karen, I know they say growing is painful. They say growing is painful, but some of the pains that we're going through right now, we may not overcome them. And I think you stressing on the fact that these are some crushing realities around gender that we need to examine. So I look forward to that. I will also add to our audience that I've followed Karen's work for some time. And good leaders don't just strive for success. They stress on consistency. And I'm really going to talk about that consistency element of leaders, and we'll discuss that further with Karen. And lastly, we'll take a flight, although the airports are all closed, but we'll metaphorically land in the beautiful country of India to talk to Sailaja, who is, I think, 1 a.m. or something to that effect where you're at, but you're powering through. Sailaja, a quick introduction and what brings you here.
So first of all, I would like to Maddie and the team and the CyberX team for hosting such a wonderful event. I would really love to do this in person, but then even the virtual effect is not less than what is written, real is what I could really say from the past days that I was attending all the sessions over here. And myself, Sailaja Vadlamudi, I'm currently working in Bangalore, the Silicon City of India. And I'm currently heading security and data privacy topic at SAP. And from the personal front, I also founded WiCSP, which is Women in Cybersecurity and Data Privacy, because I see myself like I've been mentoring and coaching so many, especially women inside the company. And then I also felt now when you're at a position to influence people, you also have to step out and, make your voice louder and share your story. and go to the rural areas. Especially, we are focusing in the rural areas and then trying to sensitize children and women on the current aspects. Because when we look into the statistics, every time, currently we are also working with a program called Cyber, which one of the southern states started and campaigned for the entire state of southern states, because they felt they also gave the statistics showing there's a huge spike in the number of cyber issues that are being reported in day in and day out in all the cyber police stations. So I'm also honored and glad to participate and also sensitize kids, children, women on different aspects of cybersecurity, because now everything is digital. Suddenly the digitization is boomed overnight due to COVID, and be it in rural area, be it in, urban place, everyone is so tightly and closely connected, and most of the time so addicted also to this internet and all the digital things that they have. And moreover, rather than getting the benefits out of it, people are also seeing they're getting trapped and they're getting into trouble. So apart from the business aspects of it. So this is also the human element, which we are also currently working, and I'm proud and happy to say, like, we are currently associated with 2 of the governments and also helping them to sensitize our people in this current corona situation, how to be safe and how to really have the proper masking when you're getting into the digital world. And then it's also important to have that cyber hygiene as a habit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And as you can all see to our audience, these are leaders, not just in cybersecurity, but leaders, I would argue, for their countries, leaders for various movements in their respective communities. We're going to jump into a couple of questions, but I really want to underscore this element of the leadership aspect of all of my panelists today. I've always said this, that leaders don't determine the team. The leader is the team. That leader wears multiple hats. And you have already heard of the multiple hats that our guests wear. I'm going to start off with Helen first and go back to the analogy of the mask. And transparency and leadership. Someone like yourself, all of you rather, at leadership positions, you've got to make certain choices on what you share and what you do not. Some of your reservations, some of your nervousness, some of your fragilities maybe, some of your concerns. How, as a woman leader in cybersecurity, have you dealt with the aspect of transparency?
For sure. It's a tricky question, because when we're talking about transparency in cybersecurity, you have to know your authority, what you can say, right, work-wise. Leadership-wise, I find that you have to be true to yourself, right? True to your principles. And throughout my career, throughout my life, I was focused on what's right, what it's right to be done, what I should do, how can I help people? How can I help people who are going through difficulties or challenges that I've been through, right? When I had help, or maybe I didn't have help in the past. So, and through that, people see and people follow. And I think by example, so you hear a lot, leadership by example. This is the primary aspect that I think all leaders have to follow. Be humble and transparent about how you feel, right? If somebody, for some reason, maybe unintentionally, came across not how you would expect them to. Yeah. Perhaps you should talk to them, right? We face so many, we challenge status quo, right? So back to status quo. I give you an example. SAP is a very diverse company, and I really like being part of them. I'm really proud. But there are people online that you may not face-to-face in an office, but you may see, you may hear something like, for example, when you have no skill, then diversity is your like a shield, or something just to get away with. So
right.
Cover up with diversity if you have no skill. So this is so unfair, right? It's unfair, and I know many say like life is not fair, but the point is, we have to change the status quo by being open and transparent throughout the life. And this is why I believe it's a lifestyle to be in cybersecurity, because you don't just try to change status quo at work. At work, people often don't even share what they really think, right? What they really think, they share online. They share in your social network. You can figure this out by communicating with people. And I think as leaders, you have to show by example, and you have to lead through different conversation, uncomfortable conversations, to change the status quo and that unfortunate mindset that's limiting us from improving.
I think, Helen, you've done a brilliant job in catapulting us to the leadership table, the boardroom where decisions are made. And I'm going to go to Karen for a second here, and then we'll go to Lydie and back to Sailaja. And Karen, in your experience, rather if I may take a step back and say, having spoken to some other leaders, they've often told me, women leaders, they've often told me that, yes, we're at the table now. A lot of women CISOs, women vice presidents in security, et cetera. But there's a difference between being at the table and being tolerated at the table. Karen, there's a nervousness sometimes that if we speak too much, that tolerance level may go down. How do you deal with speaking your mind in an environment where you've just sort of come into?
I just speak. I've learned the really hard way that if you don't speak, it's not going to serve you. That if you speak quietly, it won't serve you. So you may as well speak up. It's often very unfortunate that there's often only one seat. There's competition and undermines us. But once you're there, it's great to have that seat, but you really need to be heard. So some of the things I've done and that I noticed that a lot of women in cyber have done, we've lowered the pitch of our voices so that we can be heard. And there's actually studies that say that women's voice, the pitch at which women's voices speak at, aren't actually heard. Men are better heard. So what does that mean? I think that unintentionally we've recognized it, and that you often see us speaking in a lower tone of voice to convey authority and confidence in delivering. So, having a place is, as I said, is great, but you don't truly belong until you're actually heard.
And I want to work with that piece again of being heard and reflect on, again, just beautifully how Helen put it forward, looking at the physicality of an individual. And I'm not going to shy away from this aspect that, we do work a lot with objectivity and lenses of objectivity, and we need to break that. And just for the audience, sure, if you read feminist theory, you might suggest that I am one, and so be it. Feminism is that radical theory that women are human beings too. So if that's a crime, then great, I'm guilty. Lydie, I want to build up on what Karen just said, not just the aspect of having a voice at the table, but for someone like yourself, and please forgive me if this is too direct, not just being a woman, but a woman of color. And a woman from not necessarily coming out of the white landscape of training and certifications. For you, has it been easy to be transparent about, as a woman, discussing elements of race as well and being open about that in your engagements? Lydie?
No, absolutely not. It's not something that is, you face two challenges when you are in that type of position. First of all, you are a woman, and second, you are speaking security, which is not, always a subject matter in the boardroom. So those are the two challenges you need to face. So believe me or not, by nature, I'm a very shy person. I'm not kind of person I like to, speak very loudly. And I had to learn to speak, because if you don't ask something, the answer will be no. And to enable, to block the status quo, you need to get things done. You need to build your way. You need to put people, to bring people on your mind, to bring people to understand what you want to do, how you want to do it. And something I really realized is that it's all related with the communication, the way you are communicating with people. Being a woman, it's true that especially in the IT world, because I'm coming from the IT world, especially in the IT world, when I started, I was the only lady on the table. When you start speaking, it's like, okay, we just listening because we respect you, but are you trying to say something useful? But because you know your subject matter, because you know what you're talking about, people start listening. So you need to build your skills. You need to know what you're talking about. And when you communicate with people, you need to make you understand. I think one of the error I was doing when I started in the field, in the industry, is that I was having the same message, whatever the audience. But that doesn't work. You need to adapt your message to the people, to the person, to the context, to the person, to the where the person you are speaking with is coming from. And more importantly, at the boardroom, you need to ensure that you understand the strategy of the company, because if your message is completely not aligned with the strategy, it's true that is what, being a woman or not, they're not going to understand you, they're not going to listen to you. So you need to have a clear understanding of what is the strategy of the company and to align your message on it. It's not that you're not going to get your things done. It's just a strategy to push them, to enable, to block the status quo, back to the status quo, to enable them to listen you by speaking their language and get to the result you're trying to obtain.
Thank you so much for that, because this gives me a perfect bridge to go and walk back to Sailaja, and then we'll go into some other topics as well. Sailaja, we've engaged quite a bit. We've spoken at the Power Hour. We spoke at the previous CyberXchange, and I would argue that you're one individual who has focused a lot on being transparent about what, as a woman leader, you are seeing in the space. In India, as I mentioned, home science being one, home economics being one example, you've also looked at inequities around caste. You've looked around inequities around rural and urban divides. And you've gone by talking about, I hope our audience realizes that, when in the Indian context, yes, we talk about India as this juggernaut of economic development, but casteism, for example, I'm sure many of you have heard about the Dalit plight, or you've read many of such books that talk about inequities in India. You've been speaking out about it, and as a result of it, you founded Cyber, which is now going into remote rural communities and training folks and farmers on cybersecurity. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of being transparent and where this has taken you?
Yeah, Ali, that's a really right question. And since you also have the roots from India, you definitely know the dynamics of India and the community as such. So talking from the perspective of being transparent, all my career, I have to say, it's all about, you build trust. And then once you build trust, it's all about winning people and their minds and their hearts. So that is all about, my career is all about, if I have to sum it up. And when you're working in cybersecurity role, as Lydie or Helen or Karin mentioned, sometimes it's not so easy to be transparent, but then it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, but then you have to have your opinion on the table. And then when people understand that you're really adding value to the table as a thought leader, then people will start respecting you. So at any point of time, we also have to earn respect. People are not going to respect you because of the gender or because of the title. People really respect you because of the value you add there. And most of the times what happens is we as women, we get emotional. Sometimes, I can quote so many experiences because I was also dealing with data privacy and I'm still dealing with it. And initially when we started doing gap assessments and all of that, we had really heated up conversations in the room. And once I just have to meet one of my unit heads, and both of us were talking in the pitch of a voice, and, we both were like, screaming, yelling at each other, and in the end, the half hour is done, the meeting is done, and then we have to leave the room. And then he just still hugged me, and then he said, let's go and have a coffee. And then whatever conversation we had inside the room is entirely different with the conversation that we had at the coffee, because most of the time it is really important to keep your professional things apart and your personal things apart. When you get into that emotional stuff, all these while you're building your castle, you're just burning all those bridges. So this is one important key thing that I always keep telling my mentors. You as women, sometimes that we're talking about the subject. It's nothing to do about you or about the person. So take the person out of that and then look into the business aspects and still have that good relationship with your people. Because in this, journey of cybersecurity, you have surprises every day in and day out. For example, if you have to go and talk to the same person again about the same topic, it's important that they still trust you and they still see you as a trusted advisor, which is really, really important at this. And I think all of us on the, on the panel today will totally agree with me that we all were kind of, building our trust, and that's wherein make us our jobs and roles more easier. Because, for example, the biggest challenge is being transparent. And when people trust you, when you start building the trust aspect into the equation, it's really easy for you to openly go and tell them this is not going to work, or there is a gap, you have to really work on that, or this is an escalation, or this is a non-compliance issue. Then it becomes so natural that people don't, look at you as a surprise or something exaggerated, but they accept it as it is, and then they start working on it. So that's been my experience so far.
Thank you, Sailaja. Helen, please.
And I wanted to expand a little bit on the trust topic that Sailaja is just mentioned. I completely agree. Thank you so much for this point. How I usually approach, it's difficult to trust people in, in our age, the digital age and overall. But what I've learned from my past and how I position this situation is that if something happens, like situation when you take the person out of the equation, right? Think about that person haven't really intentionally try to do something bad, right, or negative towards you. So once you figure this out, and once you twist that situation by putting that person out and think that, they actually, it's not personal, they didn't mean it towards me. Let's talk to that person, and you won't believe, or if you've done that in the past, you will know that it always works, and you start discussing with person what happened, and the trust builds up, right? So first of all, I trust, right? Of course, reasonably. I trust people, and I always give them a chance, and even if I think it's somehow, I don't know, not inappropriate, but in negative way, I put that person out of the equation, person approach, and try to think what really they meant by that, and what is their goal, what they want to achieve by this.
I agree, and I really like that closing point, very emphatic. What do you want to achieve? And the you being your team. At the end of the day, as leaders that you are, I think Sailaja emphasized for us is, being transparent allows you not only to, it rather reminds us that don't listen to who's saying it, listen to what is being said. And this can help rid us of a lot of our biases and judgment. And I really like the way Sailaja and Helen and all of our panelists put that together. But you mentioned the aspect of you and team. And as leaders, women leaders in cybersecurity, you're all committed to creating opportunity, not just for other women, for other men as well, who are new to the cybersecurity space or might be not able to attend or enter into the cyberspace because of ethnic-related issues or other unfair realities. You're creating more opportunities. How important is it for you to create a safe environment for your team and your team members to fail? Helen, can you talk a little bit about this?
Of course. If we don't fail, we never learn. So that's kind of like almost a motto in our team, right? We allow ourselves to fail. So I think you fail if you haven't learned, right? But mistakes, we all do mistakes. And this is how we position our relationship in the teams, across leadership. It's safe to come to leadership and talk about your even failures, right? Your achievements. And it's okay to talk. We learn all the time, right? And I think it's important to provide the opportunities for everyone. We sometimes see, not on this panel, these incredible women are actually pulling a lot of people with them. But we might see that, certain level executive women come in and they get very busy in their life and they become sound like men, right? More like men. And they don't really pull others with them. So I do it myself, and I encourage all the leaders in the world, especially women and men as well, to pull others, mentor others, help them to walk through these challenges. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to relearn all the things. You can listen to advice and show them the path, bring them together, show them about something that you're doing, tell them, bring them to an event, bring them into the discussion, even if you think they might not be at the level for discussion, of course, nothing confidential, but bring them into the network, mentor. I have mentors, women and men, and I mentor myself, women and men as well. So at each stage of our career, we have different levels of mentorship that we need and that we can provide. So I think it's a never-ending learning process, and as a leader in a team, it's important to let your team members know that you are learning as a leader, and you may make a mistake as well, and be humble about that. And as well, they feel safe that they can share with you and they can ask you for an advice and let you know what they learned from their experience.
Absolutely. A mistake can become an opportunity just depending on how you respond and receive that mistake. I want to work with that just a little bit and go to Karen. And Karen, this aspect of failure. Now, perhaps this is a assumption on my part, but I'll ask it nonetheless. And maybe I'll ask it in a way where it can sort of hide some of the biases that are sort of embedded in this. You know, often there's a rule in industry that says 3 strikes and you're out. But some folks have told me for women, it's often 1 strike and you're out. You've made decisions to move different careers, to take different roles on, to try your hand at different things, and maybe even experience failure. As a woman, have you found potential failure as something that has made you less interested in trying something new? Karen?
I have a fire alarm going on behind me. Can I ask one of my fellow people to answer this? And I will unmute when it's fixed. Apologies.
Not a problem. And in the spirit of emergency preparedness, I will take that exact question and I will reverse it in a way to Sailaja, and then we'll go to Lydie. Sailaja, you started off this initiative, Cyber. Unheard of, remote rural communities, going in there, training folks on the basics of cybersecurity. Were you worried about the question of, what if I fail? Will people trust me anymore? That fear of failure, how much did that negotiate your process forward?
Yeah, Ali, thanks for this question. And yes, when I started, not Cyber is a program, when I started with Women in Cybersecurity and Data Privacy, it's not about, failing or succeeding. It's about making some impact. It's about, first of all, the first most important thing is kind of sensitizing women and children. And I never had a thought of failure in here because I myself coming from a place where it's in between rural and urban area, and I know how things are. And then when you go to the places, when you can totally relate to the people and the culture and all that, people quickly relate with you. And then sometimes, it's not about the failure aspect, but sometimes because since we all are working full time and we have a different job, roles at office, and then sometimes it's so much like, can I take it to the next level? Am I really coping enough, or am I putting my time enough? So these are the kind of challenges. And sometimes it's like, is it really worth my time? And what am I getting out of it? Or, there are a lot of questions. There's kind of a battle in the mind that happens with every one of us when you have some escalations at office and when you have some commitments from the community, or you promise somebody like you will come and speak, or you will have an assignment with your mentee. So these are the things, and most of the times, rather than the failing, sometimes I question myself: am I doing, am I doing this, good enough balance between the commitments I have from the WISP perspective, or with respect to my company, or with respect to my family? Because as women, we have different hats. And not only from the professional front, but also from the personal front, you have time to time different challenges. For example, the current challenge we have is COVID, and kids are all around. And and they also have their own set of fears and thoughts, and you also have to be with them whenever they need it. So in this current situations, rather than the failure, it's like, are you spending enough time on all of these which really matters the most to you? And do you think like you can sustain this model, having these challenges in place on your plate? That makes me think most of the times. And sometimes I also tell my friends like 24 hours is not good enough, and we need more time to work on all the things that you have in your head and your heart. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think it's quite ironic that we had a fire alarm go off, because the fire alarm goes off when something's happening that shouldn't. And when a woman walks in, it's to many folks, you're not supposed to be there, and the alarms go off. How we respond to that, as gracefully as Karen did, really dictates our success. I'm going to go to Lydie and then come back to Karen, because there are a couple of things that I think will relate back to that fire alarm and Karen's own experience. Lydie, I want to go to your position on failure. And I ask this because, and again, I apologize if this is assumptive, I have roots in Tanzania, and very often for girls, from an educational perspective, it's no different from in India. You are expected to perhaps graduate high school and then really look to settle a home and, for lack of a better word, get married. You made that decision to say you wanted to go and study security. You wanted to go and study IT. You went and broke away from the norm and broke the status quo. Did the fear of failure ever apply in your head as you were pursuing your educational dreams and pursuing your professional dreams as well, Lydie?
Yes, it was a decision when I was very young to enter to the technology field. I remember when I had a question from my father, what do you want to do when you will be, when you will grow up? I said, I want to work with a computer. That was my dream when I was a very young little girl. And that's how I get to the college, learning IT, and entering in the security industry was just an opportunity. It's not, I didn't choose to do security. I was working for a company providing solution, and that company won a project, a security project, and they wanted someone to work on it, and they decided that that person is going to be me, and this is how I went in. But it was still engineering, deploying a security solution. But from there, I had to grow up, not starting doing information security, starting doing policies, thinking about education, growing people, and I start growing to a more leadership position. And that's another story. It's very different from being an engineer. I had to understand now, rather than being able to do things by myself, how to leverage on the other to do things, how to trust them in their ability to do things, and how to get them to be confident in my ability to lead them. That's a very good example. That's a very good experience. And as Helen said, we keep learning it. You keep learning it as you are doing things, as you face challenge, you keep learning what works the best. But I think I'm a good advocate of mentorship.
Yeah,
I'm a
absolutely.
very good advocate of mentorship. I think the mentorship works. I had the chance at all the levels of my career to be mentored, to find something who trusted in me even more than myself. I was trusting in myself. So I really think that I need to give back, to trust the other, to help them understand they can do it, to push them to do it, to encourage them, to monitor them, to show them the path so that they can get to their upper potential. And I did it. I have a story, an experience. I worked with a young guy. It was a male. He came to my team because he was looking for an internship. Absolutely not because he wanted to do security. He didn't. And he told it. He said, I don't want to do security, but I was looking for work and I end up working with you. And we started working, and I started, giving him projects to manage, end-to-end project. He was very young and very surprised. How can you want me to do that? I cannot do that. And I say, you can do that. You're going to do that. We'll identify the challenge and we'll try to get things happen. And this was, I think, that guy today is working as a security expert. That created the he now loves security, he speaks security, he lives security, he enjoys working in security, just because at a moment I tell him, hey guy, you can do it. And think what is very interesting to do also. So as I said, it's all about, how to work with people, how you interact with them, which kind of relationship you build with the people, and yes, most of all, just trust them and be transparent. If you cannot do something, let's say you cannot do it, and learn how to do it and share your knowledge.
Good leaders allow you to make mistakes. Great leaders take responsibility for those mistakes. And I think what you've done here is you've taken responsibility for some of those decisions and allowed them to feel safe to try something and make a mistake. And you will own it and you'll provide them the resources. Speaking of resources, we'll go back to Karen. And Karen, we were talking earlier, about the aspect of failure and doing something which, if you fail as a woman in the technology space, in cybersecurity, to come back in, the space may be challenging. Rather than risk sounding off any alarm bells, you decided to take some risks and risk failure. How has that experience been like for you?
It's been a bit of a roller coaster. I've said it before, I feel like I've twisted myself into a pretzel trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be and what I saw leadership to be. And it took failure for me to understand that I'm great as I am. My knowledge, although I keep getting told I'm not technical, I'm pretty hands-on and did ethical hacking at the very beginning. But the messaging that came to me helped me fail because I listened to it. I heard it, I internalized it, and that was a huge failure on my part, to believe that I needed to be one of the guys and that I needed to act like them and that my voice didn't have a place because it wasn't technical enough. It took me a while to remember that cybersecurity, it brings together people, process, and technology from a confidentiality, integrity, and availability standpoint, and that is a lens that is gender neutral. It has no gender ascribed, although the experiences of each gender, I think, can come together in whatever field. For me, I see a very big need in cyber to grow and find the right people, whether or not and they are male or female. Fantastic. With respect to my failures, I hope to keep making them. I learn a lot. It's hard, though, in cyber, and I'll say this for everybody, it's really hard to fail in cyber because the pressure of accountability and the damage that can be done is quite huge. So I think a lot of people come into it with a lot of trepidation. Yep. But as a leader, if you are there and you are supporting your team and you are in the know and integrated with your team, have an open line of communication, that transparency you were talking about, you're going to build a team that feels okay coming to you and going, I think I screwed up. Yep. What do we do? And we're like, well, we fix it. It's not the blame game. It's not a competition. It's about collaborating and showing and being for teaching, leading by modeling the activity and the behaviors and the responses that you want to get.
Absolutely.
I've tried the Trump-ish. What have you done? It doesn't work. Yeah. It just instills more fear.
You brought up your own identity being Greek, and then you brought up the Trumpish, or our friends to the south, the United States, which brings me to this aspect of, when I think through leaders that we've seen from these communities, is how do we talk about our situation? And language really is words, and language are the tools with which we build the societies around us. And I want to go back to Helen again. And again, the image of the mask and the removal of it got me to think about, the social constructs around male and female, and what does it mean to be a woman in cybersecurity. Sarah Qureshi, who I was speaking to some time ago, said we have a long way to go when it comes to talking just about women in cybersecurity. We want to talk about people in cybersecurity as a whole. One of the elements of tech spaces, and this is a question that's sort of come in, and I'll work it in different ways, is the aspect of language and how we talk and how we engage with one another in our tech spaces, specifically in cybersecurity. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you've dealt with situations where, the way we talk about women, the way we talk about how men look at problems, the way women solve problems, how have you dealt with some of the language issues, especially when you take into account, and I'm sure Sailaja, Lydie, and as well as Karen will remind us, right, that a lot of our demeaning messages often refer back to something around women. How have you dealt with the language issue and ensuring that we can create a safe space?
Topic you're touching here, so we're having a candid discussion right now. So language is definitely important in the office space. Yeah, Lydia is laughing. You might hear often that women talk too much. There's like, just get to the point, right? And we are seen as emotional creatures that we don't concisely express ourselves. And maybe taking myself, I'm not talking about everybody, everybody have different experiences and so on. Yes, I can be sometimes not very concise, and I think it's something that you need to work, and no one is born with perfect speaking skills, right? It's just some people choose not to speak a lot, some people choose speak more, and you know what? It's not even a gender, right? I've seen men who just going on and on and on, and I think what's important for everybody when you expressing a situation or a problem or something, right? A technical, you need to learn to structure yourself. So I'm working, improving myself. It's continuous improvement, right? And you structure yourself. What exactly you want to deliver to your audience, right? So think about the key point. Sometimes we do need to reduce the noise. Sometimes we need to provide more background. So that really fine point is very difficult to achieve. I think we need to give each other slack and, empathy because everyone is learning. And as part of the team, I know some people more shy, some people less shy, some people love to talk, When I'm having my meetings or when I'm having discussions, I really try to engage everybody and really pull those people, like, what do you think about this, right? If I see someone is not talking, ask them, what do they think about this problem, situation? They have something to bring to the table. It's just because somebody talks more, somebody talks less. And changing status quo, like going to your first question, and I'm listening to ladies here, and things come back to me. What I wanted to say, we need to teach more, educate more the younger generation, right? So be role models. So one thing is being role model in our office, right? So engage people, not advertise, but engage diversity and make sure everybody has equal opportunities for everything that they work for, but also being a role models outside of the work, and these great ladies are doing an amazing job. I think it's very important because when I was growing up, I didn't have an opportunity to even know that cybersecurity is a possible career. I had no clue this was existing until I already was in tech and I realized that this is a very interesting field. So by going actually and doing all this work, volunteering in India, in Africa, here in Canada, US, and everywhere, we showing the younger generation this is possible. At least they know that this is an option. Because if they don't know, how are we going to get all this diverse generation into next generation of workforce.
Fantastic. And that statement on workforce and titles and identities, the workforce is driven by different titles, different ways of recognition. And I want to take that and ask Karen. And I don't know, Karen, you'll forgive me if I've made an assumption here, if this relates to some of the work that you're doing right now, but often different groups, whether it's WiCSP, whether it's Leading Cyber Ladies, all of these new movements that are driven to attract more diversity into cybersecurity, they work a lot with titles. They call you a cyber hero, or they give you a particular title or a name. They make you into an ally by giving you some supernatural titles. How important is it for us now to gamify our language a little bit and give some of these titles to everyone and animate our cybersecurity world in order to promote diversity? Karen?
I think those are really great avenues to explore, but I think we need to go back to the foundation of where that language is born and understand that maybe we need to take a closer look there. And I say this because, Lydie, you reminded me of my first job coming into cyber, and I had to write the report, having done a penetration test language, and walked to my boss and said, "This is so misogynistic, we can't give this to the customer." And then he said, "This is the language of information security." It was IT security, information security. And I said, "But the language has a problem. Can we change this?" And he said, "No, this is security." And I think a lot of the attitudes get born of the type of language. We do port scans and penetration tests, and it's not, there's a sexy or an element of sex in that language that as women in cyber, we walk in and we go, "You're putting sex in my face in some way, shape, or form." It actually feels like that. And so now I need to get around that and get past that and have a conversation with you. But I think I'm a bit older than y'all, in my 30-something years of working in this field, I've seen shifts. I've seen people who take on that sort of cowboy model and use that language, but I've also seen some really amazing people working to shift and understand that cyber affects everything, how we speak, how we train, how we communicate, and the language that we use is really critical. When it comes to the women, what I do is I start calling out and trying to identify for when other women are speaking. I try and amplify, but I also try and call out things like, "You said that she's being emotional. Let's use that word. I don't see it as emotional. She's passionate about this risk. And so she's really trying to get across to you that this is a risk you need to listen to. You haven't heard her in all the ways. So can you hear?" And that's what I'll do when I see the language and the conflicts arising.
I think that's the way in which you took this idea of giving new names to roles, to functions in cybersecurity. I thank you for underlining why we need not just new languages, but need to understand why we need to push for some new language, and we need to push for an understanding of context of what we're saying. So thank you so much for that. I will admit to this that this is one of the first times I've actually publicly spoken about my unhappiness with some of the terms that we use, and it takes a lot of courage to bring that out. So thank you for this, and I'm sure our audience on siberexchange.ca will have a lot to think about just with the word. What does it mean when we say to pen test something, and what that does to us psychologically? I've always maintained that security is not just technical. It's psychological, it's emotional, it's social, and we need to factor all of that in. We have another 6 more minutes. I want to keep on this slightly sensitive, albeit necessary topic on language, on body and objectification, and see how as leaders you've worked through it. Sailaja, will go to you, and then we'll go to Lydie, and then we'll take one more question with closing remarks. Sailaja, often, as Karen had mentioned, that sex, body image, etc., plays a role. How have you worked to ensuring that a lot of females who join your work, who join your teams, etc., feel safe in their environments? And what are some of the processes that you set in place? Have you created certain HR mandates that in case something happens, they know where to go to report it? You know how to analyze the situation? Are there any formal structures you've put in place to make sure that the workplace is not only diverse, but safe in its diversity? Sailaja?
Yeah, thank you, Ali, for this question. So at least I have to say I'm so proud to be working at SAP because we have all the best policies and all the best practices in place. So at our level, we never have to really work on the HR policies. We also seen it live when someone is really, going beyond their language, and they were also asked to leave the next moment. It doesn't matter whether you are in high potential, whether you are one of the critical resource and all that. So having said that, but for sure, it all depends when you are in the leadership position, right? When you're in a position of influence, it also matters how you treat others. It doesn't matter about a man or a woman. It's all about giving and taking respect at the workplace, and it's all about the way you communicate. And for example, some people get so restless when you don't, tell them the exact, problem statement. As Helen mentioned, some of us talk more, some of us talk less. We all are learning in this process, and then you also have to be also patient enough to put it across. And on the other side, to make, be it a woman, be it a man, to make them feel comfortable. As we all were also discussing, you also have to walk the talk that you're talking about. And most of the times what we see is, in the cybersecurity world, we need a lot of sponsors. We need a lot of mentors. So I just believe like you have to be a sponsor yourself, and you also have to have a sponsor in the right place in the right time. And I can also share so many such experiences when people started working with me. Initially, it was mostly men. And even now, I have most of the men in my team who was working in the cybersecurity topic. For sure, for example, if I have to travel, I really get the budget from my boss, but then I have to get one more person on the team. It's not possible. But then we are working on a very critical project. I ensured the particular client is paying for his thing, and he's also getting a good, nice exposure of working on a full-blown, kind of a risk assessment for a new product, which is also going to be his, very first experience. So when you create such kind of atmosphere, like being a sponsor and being the voice of it, and also helping them to fail often, and then you take the ownership and the responsibility. And when people know you are, when people categorize you as a leader to go to for anything, you can even talk openly about your fears and your failures. That's wherein you can really change the status quo, and, you can really impact it. And coming to the language and the aspects of it, first of all, you as a person, you will have some inbuilt, skill set or kind of your beliefs. So that belief system is something which makes you stronger and moves you forward. And some of us are really fortunate to be working in some companies where you have everything in place. But even then, we as human, the kind of, personality that we exhibit, people try to imitate you, follow you when they see you as a role model. That is wherein, it makes most of the time the biggest difference in the workspace that you're there.
Thank you so much for that. And Sailaja, you've spoken about traveling with your teams, making decisions. You have a following around you as well. Your colleagues, your other female colleagues, look up to you and sort of see what you're doing and try to follow that. And I want to use that as some strength to go to Lydie with some closing comments from you, Lydie. Is this aspect of you're one of few women that we've seen from your locale that are coming out, that are speaking at worldwide conferences. One of the silver linings of the pandemic, if you would say, has allowed us to speak without walls and bring continents closer together. Are you now seeing that, given your role at siberXchange, the fact that you're talking at different forums, are you now seeing more women coming to you, getting to know you, and getting interested in speaking about their experiences and speaking about cyber? What has the result been of being involved and speaking at such conferences?
Oh, yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah. Let me first tell something. I told you by nature, I'm very shy person, I decided to jump in and start speak, loudly, and start, speak in the conference because I wanted to be a role model for the young ladies so that they can also sit and say, this is what I want to be. Because if they see nothing, they will not dream of being something, And this is something that happened to me when I was in the college. One of my teacher was a lady, the only one in the entire college, the only woman teacher in the only college, and it was my inspiration, to continue in that technology field, and also it was my motivation, to continue and to keep pushing the limits in the cybersecurity. So yes, the fact that people are seeing you as a role model,
Absolutely.
it creates a kind of interest in them. They know that they can do it, and this is very important. They know that they can do it, and some field of the cybersecurity, unfortunately, are very backstage field. It's very difficult to get to public recognition when you do some of those very technical domain of cybersecurity. So even at that level, it's just amazing. I've been listed among the 50 women doing cybersecurity in Africa. And one of the comments of my previous manager is that he was just happy because that's a recognition given to a woman working on backstage. Before I went to the
Powerful.
leadership position, before I become a CIO, a chief information security officer. So it's also, I think, being a role model, being able to show up, being able to have the good attitude, the good relationship, being able to network with those ladies, that help us, to also
To
create
build community,
interest
yeah, and
in
build
them,
community.
know that they can do it and that they can achieve it. I really also trust in networking, not only a role model, but also networking, so that we give them opportunity to talk and we give them opportunity to speak, to express themselves
Fantastic.
and to learn.
Fantastic. And I know that there are lots of questions, but we do have to wrap up. But I'll take the liberty of taking an extra minute and very quickly allow you, or request you rather. We have diverse folks on this call, on this session, from different ethnic groups as well, from different linguistic groups as well. I want you to give me, if possible, and if not, you can post it on siberXchange.ca. Can you give me one word, whether it's in your native language, whether it's in English, doesn't really matter, one word that reflects who you are in the world of cybersecurity? Helen, we'll start off with you.
2 words.
Absolutely, go for it.
Be brave.
Thank you, Helen. We'll work with that. Be brave. Sailaja, I'm hoping for a nice Bollywood dialogue, but even 2 words in Hindi will do just fine. Go for it.
Be bold.
Be brave, be bold. Karen, we'll go to you. Maybe something in Greek. I don't know. Your choice.
Be resilient.
Be bold, be brave, be resilient. Lydie, 1 word, 2 words. What does it matter? Just one line, maybe.
A line, yes. You are what matter.
You're what matter. Well, with that said, I want to thank our panelists, and I want to remind our audience about the fact that you learned not only about responsible leadership, you learned about taking ownership, and about being humble. I'll close with an African proverb that says, only a foolish person tests the depth of the water with 2 feet. Go 1 step at a time and see how far you go, and reach out to mentors like those on the call today. Karen, Sailaja, Lydie, Helen, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to engaging with you further. Enjoy the rest of the day at siberXchange.ca. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.